Get a grip, then get a chip. Won't even trip. Though my cup was running over, I took only a sip. Stay hippin', then I'm hopping, I'm dropping. It won't be flopping, no shock. That whatever I'm selling, you will be copping. He was the strongest, though he was the one that cried. And he chose to kill his brother, cause he was from that side. And why? He chose this son, cause this one had pride. And instead of the narrow road, he chose the one that's why. Sometimes the one that won was the one that tried. And the one who pulled the gun was the one that died. Looking good, a good look is the one that's fine. If I had to pick, fly would be the one that's mine. G-O-D, in the place to be. Attendee, Hard Knocks University. And since kindergarten, they've been hiding the knowledge. Homeboy is self-taught, never went to college. I'm brown skinned, I'm from Pelon. Rainy alarm, then I remain cool and calm. Reading Psalm, fire like napalm bomb. We are in the information age on Do You Know Your Value page. It's the content creator with force like Darth Vader, back on the track with the facts and all that. One path is the way that I'm taking, getting closer to God in a tight situation as we proceed to give you what you need. What's going on, folks? A long time, but a strong time. And there's a really good document that I want to go over. It's one of the first documents that I came across like 9 years ago. And I think it's a very, very important document that we get into and go over. And it's called Creditors and Their Bonds. And we will begin now. All right, creditors and their bonds, plus the hidden commercial court process. American debtors' prisons. Creditors and their bonds. Bond. In every case, a bond represents debt. Its holder is a creditor of the corporation and not a part owner, as is the shareholder. The word bond is sometimes used more broadly to refer also to unsecured debt instruments. Definitions here are generally from Black's 6. Number 1, bond supporting credit authorizations. This bond is the debt side of the implied contract that resulted when your grandparents took all their gold to the Federal Reserve banks by May 1st, 1933. A bond is always evidence of a debt. It can be a liability to the debtor or an asset to the creditor. This bond is also the implied debt that resulted when you applied for a birth certificate for new entities. Strawman, you requested that the state create when you had your babies. You put a description of your baby on the application. This tied the baby and the straw man together as long as the described baby man lived. When the man dies, the straw man is terminated by the state with a death certificate. It has no commercial energy without the man. Straw man, a front, a third party who's put up a name only to take part in a transaction. Nominal party to a transaction. One, all caps version of your name, who acts as an agent for another, the real living soul, for the purposes of taking title to real property and executing whatever documents and instruments the principal, the real living soul, may direct respecting the property. Person, the all caps version, who purchases property for another, the real living soul, to conceal identity or real purchaser, or to accomplish something that is otherwise not allowed. Can't mix public and private. Implied partnership, one which is not a real partnership, but which is recognized by the court as such because of the conduct of the parties. The defendant trusts you as trustee as the defendant's surety. In effect, the parties are stopped from denying the existence of a partnership. That is a dishonor. This bond is also the implied debt that resulted when you applied for a title to a car, a mortgage, or any other loan that resulted in collateral being registered with the state. You cannot be required to pledge your substance, but you can voluntarily pledge it to help the U.S. through its bankruptcy status. Pledge, a bailment, a delivery of goods or personal property by one person, bailor, strawman, to another bailee, state or U.S., in trust for the execution of a special object, exemption upon or in relation to such goods. If you do not volunteer, you may be given choices to make it easier for you to volunteer, but you must always do this voluntarily. You are not asked to give your substance, only to pledge it. While you keep possession of the substance, you return You get the implied bond. The straw man receives a social security number. The correlating private side number is the exemption identifier number. Same digits, just no dashes. Public debt number is the straw man debtor agent of the U.S. or state. Private exemption number will be the same numbers but without the dashes, and that'll be the creditor. And that's the two sides of the account ledger. The straw man is a creation of the debtor corporation, so it's presumed to be an officer, agent, or employee of the debtor corporation. It must file tax returns and must follow all the corporate rules and regulations, public laws. The man, on the other hand, is not a creation of the debtor corporation, but is the presumed representative of the straw man. The man is also the one who had the creditor side of the debt the U.S. owes. This is the national debt, at least part of it. Part of the national debt is owed to the people who pledge their substance in return for an exemption from paying public debts. The U.S. runs on credit. It does not have its own credit. Everything is backed by the full faith and credit of the people. We have to have faith that the U.S. will honor its debts, and we have to know how to use our credit. The straw man cannot use your credit on its own, but it can use it if you authorize it. Our authorization is backed by the implied contract and the resulting bond, the debt the U.S. has to the people. As long as the people are not acting like debtors and victims, they can use their credit. When the people start acting like debtors, straw men, they dishonor their own heritage and rights. Your private instruments are backed by the bond. The number on the bond is the 9 digits for the social, for the real living soul of John Doe. Number 2, bond for discharge. This is the creditor / holder side of the bond, evidence of a debt. When you use a debt for discharge, you are using your credit backed by the implied debt resulting from your pledges to help the U.S. through its bankruptcy. There's no value limit to this bond, as you voluntarily agree to pledge every bit of substance you ever get until the money is put back into circulation. All the substance you have, cars, dirt, shoes, food, toothbrushes, was required by giving the merchants Federal Reserve notes. You can never get title to things unless you pay for them. Since there's no money in the U.S., only debt paper, every time you get a pair of shoes, you're exchanging a debt for the shoes. In the U.S. since 1933, that is an acceptable practice. Outside the U.S. and its states, in the states, that is not acceptable. If you try to get shoes without paying for them in the states, you will be put in jail for stealing. But in the jurisdiction of the U.S., you can get possession of the shoes by giving the merchant debt paper. You just can't get title. If you want the title, you will have to give the merchant a real asset from the private side, substance. The only substance that is yours is your exemption. That equates to credit in admiralty and equity. March 9th, 1933, 73rd Congress. Mr. Patman. Under the new law, the money issued to the banks in return for government obligations, bills of exchange, drafts, notes, trade acceptances, and bankers' acceptances. The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it's backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. Mr. Partman, the money so issued would not have one penny of gold coverage behind it because it is really not needed. The bills of exchange are government obligations, and to private investors, the banker's acceptances are government obligations. When you accept a presentment for value and sign it, you have just done a banker's acceptance. Public banks can also do a banker's acceptance. It is not designated to just one side or the other. Have you asked who's issuing the new money to the banks? Can the government issue money to the banks? Can other banks issue money to the banks? Where is this new money that is going to be issued to the banks? Where does the bank go when it needs? Where does the bank go when it wants to be issued more money? The people have always been private bankers in the states of America. Now we also have public bankers. The people used to dig up the gold and silver out of the ground, have it minted, and then put it into circulation. Now the people sign notes and give them to the banks to turn into debt money. And the banks put the debt into circulation as money. It would be against the law for the people to do that. They have to issue their credit money to the bank to do through their straw man, to do through the straw man. When you use the U.S. bond, even though it is an implied bond, to discharge a public debt, the debt is discharged. House Joint Resolution 192 is the written public insurance policy guaranteeing this can be done. The people are still issuing new money to the banks by signing notes and giving them to the banks. Implied. This word is used in law in contrast to express. In other words, with intention in regard to the subject matter is not manifested by explicit and direct words, but is gathered by implication or necessary action from the circumstances, the general language, or the conduct of the parties. Using the bond to discharge another debt is common in the U.S. This department said the new money represented a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. He used the word nation with an expansive intent. There were and are no people in the nation. The nation is a political creation, but there are people behind all the straw men which are in the nation. On a mortgage, there's always a debtor and a creditor. The new money was issued based on the people and U.S. corporations turning in their gold. The corporations were controlled by the U.S., but the people were not. The corporations had no substance, but the people did. The people volunteered to enter an implied contract with the U.S. The New Deal was announced in Congress in March 1933. The executive order was given in April. The gold had to be deposited in the Federal Reserve banks by May 1st. The Congress proclaimed its public policy in House Joint Resolution 192 in June. The new public policy was that no creditor on this new mortgage could require payment in any particular form of U.S. coin or currency. As creditors, the people could not require payment for any new mortgage in gold. Neither could any other creditor. That new deal made the people who participated in the salvation of the U.S. corporation creditors. It also made debtors of the U.S. corporations their officers, agents, and employees, including all the straw men. This is an example of set-off and adjustment of mutual debts. The straw man owes debts to a U.S. corporation agency, and the U.S. owes a debt through an implied promise to the man. The U.S. can never pay the man because there's no money, but the U.S. can give the straw man debt money it can use in commerce in the U.S. to use to get possession of products and services for you. You get to use the products and services when you use a bond to discharge the public debt. You have used your exemption credit, which is the only title you can have on the private side. You are an investor in the U.S. corporations. That does not make you an owner. It makes you a creditor. And part 3 will be, or page 5 will be, starting an appearance bond. But we're going to stop right here. Give you something to go over and think about. And because I want to make these short, but definitely valuable. So I'll make sure while you're reading, you come across a word you're not necessarily familiar with, go to the dictionary, look the word up. It's best to get yourself a law dictionary. Black's law dictionaries are good. Bovier's dictionaries are also very good. And I'm going to talk with you guys later, man. Peace and blessings.